Every fishing expert will tell you patience is key to catching fish, but pirates had no patience and somehow pulled entire schools from the ocean in under 10 minutes. How is this even possible? When pirates needed food fast, they didn't mess around with fishing poles and patience. These weren't your weekend anglers hoping for a lucky bite. Pirates had entire crews to feed and empty bellies made for mutinous sailors, so they got smart about where and when to drop their nets. The real secret? Timing everything around fish spawning seasons. During these periods, massive schools of fish gathered in predictable spots like clockwork. Think thousands of fish packed so tight you could practically walk across their backs. Pirates learned these patterns better than most fishermen because their lives literally depended on it. Shallow coral reefs became their favorite hunting grounds. Here's why that's genius. When high tide rolled in, fish would swim over the reefs to feed. But as the tide dropped, they'd get trapped in lagoons and tidal pools. Pirates would position themselves at these natural bottlenecks and wait, like shooting fish in a barrel, except the barrel was nature itself. Then there's the daily rhythm that most people completely ignore. Dawn and dusk weren't just pretty times for pirates to admire sunsets. These were feeding frenzies. Fish become incredibly active during these twilight hours, making them easier to spot and catch in huge numbers. Smart pirate crews would already have their nets ready before first light. River mouths presented another goldmine opportunity. During migration periods, fish would funnel through these narrow passages in enormous schools. Pirates camping near estuaries could intercept entire populations moving between fresh and salt water. The geography did half the work for them. But here's what made Caribbean piracy particularly successful: year-round fishing seasons. Unlike northern waters where fish disappeared for months, Caribbean waters offered predictable movements throughout the year. Different species, different seasons, but always something swimming in massive groups. The weird part is how pirates became better at reading water patterns than many professional fishermen. They had to be. Miss the feeding times, choose the wrong reef, or camp at the wrong river mouth, and your crew starts eyeing you suspiciously. Nothing undermines pirate authority faster than empty stomachs and growling bellies. Pirates also discovered that fish behavior became incredibly predictable once you understood their basic needs: food, reproduction, and safety. Schools moved along the same routes, gathered in the same spots, and followed the same seasonal timing year after year. Weather played a huge role too. Storms would push bait fish into protected bays, and the bigger fish always followed. Smart pirates used approaching weather as a fishing forecast. Of course, knowing where and when to find fish was only half the battle. The real challenge was catching massive quantities quickly before schools scattered or moved on. Finding fish was just the beginning. Actually, catching massive quantities required coordination that would make modern military operations look casual. Pirates had to transform their crews from sword-swinging maniacs into precision fishing machines within minutes. The centerpiece of their arsenal? Say nets stretched between multiple boats like underwater spiderwebs. These weren't your grandfather's fishing nets either. We're talking about massive contraptions that could encircle entire schools of fish swimming in formation. The technique demanded split-second timing because fish don't wait around for pirates to figure out their geometry. Hand signals became the pirates' secret language during these operations. One wrong gesture and hundreds of fish would scatter like startled birds. The crew manning the lead boat would spot the school, raise a fist, and suddenly 20 pirates would move in perfect silence. No shouting, "Ahoy, matey!" during these moments. Sound travels underwater faster than most people realize. But here's where things get really clever. Pirates mastered something called purse seining, which sounds fancy but works like a drawstring purse underwater. They drop their nets in a circle around the fish, then pull ropes that close the bottom completely. Fish swimming inside suddenly found themselves trapped in an underwater prison with no escape route. The real genius lay in boat positioning. Smart captains created funnel effects by arranging their vessels in specific formations that naturally drove fish toward the waiting nets. It's like herding cattle, except cattle don't swim in 3 dimensions and panic when they see wooden ships above them. Speed separated successful crews from hungry ones. Experienced pirates could deploy massive nets, encircle a school, and haul in their catch in under 10 minutes. That's faster than most people can parallel park, and these guys were doing it while bobbing on ocean swells with equipment that weighed hundreds of pounds. The coordination required was honestly ridiculous. One person had to watch for fish movements, another managed net deployment, someone else handled boat steering, and the rest worked the ropes in perfect synchronization. Miss your cue by 5 seconds, and dinner swims away laughing. Then there's the matter of net retrieval, arguably harder than deployment. Hauling in nets full of thrashing fish while maintaining boat formation tested every crew member's strength and timing. Pirates developed pulley systems and human chains that could lift catches weighing more than small cannons. Well, cooperative fishing only worked when conditions stayed calm and fish behaved predictably. But when desperate times called for desperate measures, pirates had far more explosive solutions waiting in their arsenal. Now here's where things get properly dangerous. Pirates didn't just sit around with fishing rods when they needed food fast. They grabbed gunpowder and decided to blow fish out of the water, literally. Small charges of gunpowder, carefully wrapped in waterproof cloth, became underwater bombs that could stun entire schools instantly. One controlled explosion in shallow water would send dozens of fish floating to the surface, completely unconscious, but perfectly edible. The trick wasn't killing them, it was stunning them just enough to make collection effortless while keeping the meat intact. But this wasn't some reckless boom and hope situation. Pirates had to calculate water depth, fish density, and powder amounts with deadly precision. Too much gunpowder would shred the fish into useless bits. Too little wouldn't stun enough to make the risk worthwhile. The sweet spot required understanding how shock waves traveled through water and how different fish species reacted to the concussion. Only the ship's powder master attempted this technique. These guys already handled explosives for cannon work, so they understood timing and fuse lengths better than anyone. They'd lower waterproof charges on ropes, light short fuses, and pray everything went according to plan. One miscalculation could blow holes in the ship's hull or take off someone's hand. The weird part is how effective this method was in coral reef areas. Shallow water amplified the shock waves, and coral formations trapped fish schools in perfect killing zones. Pirates would spot massive schools during feeding times, position their boats strategically, and drop charges at multiple points simultaneously. Within minutes, they'd have enough fish to feed the entire crew for days. Storage became crucial since wet gunpowder was useless gunpowder. Pirates kept special powder reserves in sealed barrels specifically for fishing explosions, separate from their combat supplies. They couldn't afford to waste military-grade powder on daily meals, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Then, there's the timing element that made this technique truly brilliant. Fish schools moved predictably through certain areas during spawning seasons or feeding frenzies. Pirates would wait for maximum density before setting off explosions, ensuring every charge yielded the highest possible catch. Missing the timing meant wasting precious powder and alerting every fish in the area to avoid that spot. The most experienced crews could coordinate multiple explosions across different depth levels, stunning fish at various water columns simultaneously. Surface fish, mid-water swimmers, and bottom feeders all got caught in the shock waves. But explosions weren't the only way pirates improvised fishing tools from their ships. When gunpowder ran low, they had to get creative with whatever material surrounded them on deck. When cannon smoke cleared and gunpowder ran low, pirates turned to the most brilliant fishing hack of all time. They looked up at their own ship's sails. Those massive sheets of canvas weren't just for catching wind. They made incredible drag nets for scooping up entire schools of fish. Picture this madness. Crews would lower their mainsail into the water behind a moving ship, creating an underwater parachute that collected everything in its path. The sail's natural curve formed a perfect fish-collecting pocket. Smart pirates reinforced the edges with rope to prevent tearing because replacing a sail in the middle of the Caribbean wasn't exactly convenient. But here's where it gets really creative. Pirates discovered that hanging canvas underwater in one spot for several hours created artificial reefs. Fish love structure. It gives them places to hide and hunt. So these accidental marine architects would stretch old sailcloth between coral formations, wait a few hours, then return to find their improvised reef absolutely packed with curious fish. The barrel hoop trick was pure genius, though. Pirates would take apart old barrels, keeping those perfectly round wooden hoops. They'd wrap fishing nets around the hoops, creating instant fish traps that could be dropped into shallow water. Multiple traps meant multiple chances. And the weird part is, these simple contraptions often outperformed expensive fishing equipment. Then there's the multi-hook madness that would make modern fishermen jealous. Instead of using single hooks like civilized people, pirates attached dozens of hooks to one heavy line. They'd bait every hook and drop the whole mess overboard. When fish started biting, it was like hitting the lottery. Multiple catches on every pull. The technique required serious arm strength, but pirates weren't exactly lacking in that department. Let's not forget how they turned their entire ship into fishing equipment. The rigging system designed for handling heavy sails became an elaborate pulley network for lifting massive nets full of fish. Crews could haul in catches that would normally require specialized fishing vessels. The ship's boom, normally used for cargo, became the perfect crane for swinging loaded nets aboard. These improvised tools worked because pirates understood something crucial. Fish are predictable creatures. Create the right conditions, give them what they want, and they'll practically jump into your boat. Well, speaking of jumping into boats, pirates had an even more direct approach to fishing that didn't require any tools at all, just sharp reflexes, perfect timing, and enough courage to get up close and personal with their dinner. When pirates needed food fast and nets weren't cutting it, they grabbed whatever sharp metal they could find and got personal with their prey. These weren't your typical fishing spears. Pirates turned ship scraps into deadly multi-pronged weapons that could skewer several fish with one thrust. The clever part? They'd hammer out 3 or 4 sharp points from old barrel hoops, nails, and broken sword pieces. One spear could nail multiple fish swimming in tight formation. Makes sense when you're feeding 30 hungry crew members, right? But here's where things got really interesting. Pirates borrowed techniques straight from whale hunters, adapting massive harpoons for smaller but still substantial catches like tuna and grouper. These weren't gentle fishing methods. They were warfare against schools of fish. The harpoon rope stayed attached to the ship, so even if a large fish tried escaping, it couldn't get far. Well, individual spearing was just the beginning. Smart pirate crews developed coordinated attacks that resembled military operations. Picture this: 5 or 6 pirates surrounding a trapped school of fish in shallow water, spears raised, waiting for the signal. When the lookout shouted, every spear flew simultaneously. The result? Dozens of fish caught in seconds. And the weird part is how they used their ship's height advantage. Pirates stationed sharp-eyed crew members high up in the rigging, acting as spotters. These lookouts could see fish movements underwater that deck-level pirates missed completely. They'd shout directions, pointing crews toward the thickest concentrations of fish below. Then there's the rapid-fire technique that separated amateur fishermen from seasoned pirates. Experienced crews didn't waste time aiming carefully. They threw spears in quick succession, almost like arrows from a bow. Each pirate carried multiple spears, launching them one after another into dense fish schools. The faster they moved, the less time fish had to scatter. The most dangerous part wasn't the spearing itself. Pirates often leaped into shallow water, spears in hand, chasing fish that tried escaping toward deeper areas. This meant fighting currents, sharp coral, and sometimes larger predators that the commotion attracted. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Let's not forget the retrieval system. Pirates attached thin ropes to their spears, making recovery easier and preventing valuable weapons from sinking. A single well-crafted spear could last months of heavy fishing if properly maintained. The beauty of spearfishing was its silence. Unlike explosive methods that scared away other marine life, spearing could continue for hours without disrupting the entire ecosystem. This stealth advantage became crucial when pirates discovered even more elaborate ways to trap fish without any weapons at all. Nothing attracts fish quite like the promise of an easy meal, and pirates understood this better than most fishermen of their time. While honest sailors might drop a single line with a worm, these sea rogues turned bait into an art form that would make modern anglers jealous. Ships' galley scraps became liquid gold in the hands of clever pirates. Stale bread, rotting vegetables, and leftover meat got tossed overboard in carefully calculated amounts. The trick wasn't just throwing food into the water, it was creating what they called bait balls. These floating buffets drew fish from incredible distances, turning empty waters into feeding frenzies within hours. Smart crews saved their worst food specifically for this purpose, because apparently fish don't mind eating what humans won't touch. But here's where things get really interesting. Pirates discovered that timing their chumming made all the difference in the world. Drop scraps randomly, and you'd get a few curious fish. Release them during dawn feeding times near coral reefs. Suddenly you're dealing with hundreds of hungry fish fighting over breakfast. The secret was understanding fish behavior better than the fish themselves understood it. Then there were the overnight trap systems that separated amateur fishermen from the pros. Using empty barrels, ship rope, and bits of timber, crews constructed portable fish weirs in shallow coastal waters. These weren't your typical fishing traps. They were engineering marvels designed for maximum efficiency. The entrance funneled fish in easily, but the exit required navigation skills that most fish simply didn't possess. What made these traps brilliant was their portability. Unlike permanent fishing structures that coastal communities built, pirate traps could be assembled quickly, left overnight in promising spots, and retrieved before dawn. Many a surprised crew woke up to find dozens of fish trapped and waiting for collection. It was like having fish deliver themselves directly to your dinner table. The real genius lay in combining multiple techniques simultaneously. While bait attracted fish to specific areas, strategically placed traps caught the ones that didn't take the hook immediately. Pirates learned that hungry fish rarely traveled alone. Catch one, and you'd likely find an entire school nearby. Makeshift fish corrals built from ship timber and lagoons created semi-permanent fishing stations for longer stays. These temporary structures required minimal materials but produced maximum results when positioned correctly near natural fish highways. Strategic chumming and trapping required patience, but the payoff was enormous catches with minimal effort. While other sailors worked hard for individual fish, pirates worked smart for entire schools. However, even the best bait systems couldn't match the raw efficiency of what came next. Methods that turned the ocean itself into a massive processing plant. When pirates hauled in massive catches, they faced a ticking clock. Fish spoil fast in tropical heat, and nobody wants to explain to the captain why dinner smells like death. The smart crews had their preservation game down to a science. The moment nets hit the deck, it was organized chaos. One guy gutted, another salted. Someone else sorted by size. No time for chatting about the weather. Assembly line processing made all the difference. Pirates weren't exactly known for their teamwork, but hunger has a way of motivating cooperation. The fastest crew member got the gutting knife. Makes sense, right? You don't want your slowest sailor holding up the entire operation while fish rot in the sun. Salt barrels stayed ready at all times. These weren't just any barrels. They kept the good salt specifically for fish preservation. Pirates learned the hard way that using cooking salt for everything meant going hungry later. Smart captains always kept preservation supplies separate from daily use. But here's where things get interesting. Quick smoking techniques using the ship's galley fires could preserve an entire haul in just a few hours. The cook suddenly became the most important person on deck, and pirates actually listened when he barked orders. Well, most of the time. The weird part is how efficient desperate men could become. When you're staring at enough fish to feed the crew for weeks, everyone suddenly develops amazing knife skills. Even the guy who usually couldn't tie his own boots correctly became a gutting expert. Then there's the immediate distribution strategy. Pirates didn't just preserve everything. They divided large catches into meal portions right away. Fresh fish went to immediate cooking, medium quality fish got salted, and the rest went straight to the smoking process. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten. Some crews got so good at this they could process 100 fish in under an hour. That's faster than most modern fishing operations, and they did it with basic knives and sea salt. Speed was everything because Caribbean heat showed no mercy. Fish left sitting for even 30 minutes started going bad. Pirates who mastered rapid preservation ate well for weeks. Those who didn't? Let's just say they learned to appreciate hardtack biscuits real quick. The entire process required perfect timing and coordination. But when food supplies ran low and the crew got desperate, even the most chaotic bunch of sea rogues could transform into a well-oiled fish processing machine. Of course, all these careful preservation methods meant nothing when storms hit and supplies ran dangerously low. When pirates found themselves starving at sea with broken nets and no proper fishing gear, desperation turned them into creative survival experts. These weren't the glory days of massive hauls. This was life or death fishing where anything that could trap a fish became fair game. Hammocks made surprisingly effective drag nets. Pirates would tie the corners to boat sides and drag them through shallow water, scooping up whatever swam into their path. The loose weave worked perfectly for this, tight enough to catch fish, but open enough to let water flow through. Clothing worked too, though you'd better hope the fish were biting because walking around naked on a pirate ship wasn't exactly comfortable. But here's where things got wild. During feeding frenzies, when fish went absolutely crazy in shallow water, pirates literally grabbed them with bare hands. Schools of fish would get so frantic, they'd practically throw themselves at anything moving. Smart crews waded into knee-deep water and just started grabbing. The trick was moving fast before the frenzy ended. Then there were the truly desperate measures that sound completely insane but actually worked. Pirates discovered that dragging heavy anchor chains through shallow water created enough vibration and noise to stun confused fish. They'd drag these massive chains behind small boats, then circle back to collect whatever floated to the surface. Not exactly subtle, but when you're starving, subtlety doesn't fill stomachs. The ship's bell became an underwater fish stunning device in emergencies. Crews would lower it into shallow water and strike it repeatedly. The sound waves traveling through water disoriented fish enough that they'd float stunned for several minutes, long enough for quick collection. Metal pots worked similarly, though they made less impressive noises. Well, the most extreme method involved using precious rum or gunpowder to disorient fish schools. Pirates would pour small amounts of rum into concentrated areas where fish gathered, creating alcohol clouds that made fish sluggish and easy to catch. Gunpowder worked too, though wasting either resource took serious desperation. These weren't methods you'd use unless absolutely everything else had failed. The weird part about emergency fishing was how quickly pirates adapted their thinking. Suddenly, every piece of ship equipment became a potential fishing tool. Rope became fish-stunning whips. Wooden buckets turned into fish scoops. Even torn sails found new life as fish corralling devices. These survival techniques separated successful pirate crews from those who starved at sea. When traditional fishing failed, the crews who survived were the ones creative and desperate enough to turn their entire ship into one massive fishing operation, no matter how ridiculous the methods looked.